Hello everyone, Random Gamer Riven, the editor of Randomised Gaming here. And in today's video we are going to have a crash course in QA testing. Or more specifically, I am going to detail the mountain of bugs that I found in the first few days of playing the Mortal Kombat Legacy Kollection. So this is going to be an interesting one, as I will be firing links to this video off the Digital Eclipse and various NetherRealm employees after I've done it, to make a point of, you know guys, this is what you need to do to fix it. It's certainly been an interesting few days for Digital Eclipse, who have certainly taken some flack for the state this collection has released in. I will say in their defence, it's not the worst retro collection I've seen released, and I've certainly been enjoying the collection myself, as it's always nice to replay the original classic Mortal Kombat arcade games, and I'm finally glad we got the WaveNet release, and we've also had a digital release of the Mortal Kombat 3 original arcade game, which was missing from previous collections. In terms of quality, this is technically better than the previous ones in some areas, but not quite as good as in others. Now, I do think there has been some ball dropping by Digital Eclipse, Atari and Warner Brothers here. There was no reason for this game to release in this state. They could have delayed it a few weeks if needed, because this was originally due to tie in as a film tie-in for the new Mortal Kombat 2 film, which has now been delayed till 2026. It's got Carl Urban in it, who will be taking on the role of Johnny Cage, and it's a sequel to the previous 2021 film, although I will admit I haven't actually seen it, but I will get round to seeing it at some point. Now, as this is no longer a film tie-in, there was no release rush pressure. And it seems odd that they've done this now, because they could have simply held off till when the film released and added in a load more titles. This collection does have a lot of games, but it does have a number of missing titles, and I will go over all the variants that I think it should have included a bit later. And to me, from a QA perspective, this does look a bit amateurish and rather rushed. And just to give you a bit of background on myself, I've actually been credited since 2007 for various QA projects within the industry, and I do have a Moby Games page, and it almost looks like they haven't fully QA tested the game, or, and I suspect it probably has been QA tested, and it was more a case of that the QA team were told this is what we call ISB chaps, or in-shipped build, i.e. they've had a load of bugs that's been sent to them and they're just like, oh, we'll ship it now and we'll patch it later. And this tactic of developing games needs to stop dead. I mean, this is really is amateur hour when you're doing this. And it does have a very negative impact on companies' reputations. And it will impact future sales. And that's something, if you are Wade Rosen, the head of Atari, you need to think about. You need to say, right, is this going to damage future game sales with releasing it in this state? And should we be telling Warner that we need to delay this just to patch this up and look a bit better? Because this damages the whole Mortal Kombat brand. So even NetherRealm and Ed Boon are a bit tarnished with the fact they've let it release in this state as well. So I think there does need to be some rethinking and taking a step back all round. I do wonder, however, if the release date was a contractual agreement date and they couldn't get it moved back, in which case that's a failure on legal side to sort out. And I have known that, where a game is basically due to release on a contractual date and they cannot move it or delay it. But we will never know the exact reason behind it. Now, that said and done, I am a die-hard Mortal Kombat fan. I first played the original game when I was about 10 back in the arcades. So many years ago, way back in the 90s, I remember seeing the original. I just remember watching the original arcade game, seeing the bit where it said finish him, and I thought there's going to be some like cool gory death move, and sure enough, after a few matches one player came along and he performed a cool gory death move. Ironically, I was no stranger to gory games at that point, because I'd played Barbarian on the Amiga, which equally had a notorious death move where you could do a spinning head chop that, if it connected correctly, would chop your character's head off, the blood would throw and the little goblin would come along and kick the head along. This collection is priced here in the UK at £40. On the PlayStation it's 42 quid on the Xbox. I don't know why Xbox games are slightly higher. Switch games tend to be a little higher as well, I've noticed. And although that might seem a little pricey to some, all I'll say is here in Europe, Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero's Mythology on the PS1, if you want a genuine complete copy, is going to set you back at least 120 quid. Special Forces as well on the PS1 here in Europe sets you back about 100. and Mortal Kombat 2 on the 32X, a complete copy, will set you back at least 80 quid. So yeah, it's quite a saving in comparison, considering the fact this collection includes all three. Another huge positive for this collection is the fact this collection includes the first release of the WaveNet version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which many believed was lost, which is the only version to play as Noob Saibot. And as you're aware from my last video, shameless plug now, but you saw me doing a playthrough as Noob Saibot in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and it's actually good fun. It's also got a few bug fixes, so it is the definitive version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. And I'm really glad it's got included, and kudos to Digital Eclipse for actually getting it added. And it's fair to say that is the holy grail in this collection, so thank you Digital Eclipse for including that, thank you NetherRealm for finally including that. Now, one thing I will say, according to some historical forums, there was mention that there was originally a Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet edition, however that hasn't been included. And I don't know if any copies of Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet still exist. It may well be the case that they were upgraded to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, because Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was originally a conversion kit, so it may well be that none of those ones originally exist, which is a shame. I'd still like to see the original Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet edition if it was available, but I suspect they were all converted to the Ultimate edition. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet is the definitive version in the arcades of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Now, I've actually got a 22-point list of various issues I found and suggestions for improvements and tweaks. And I did actually submit a suggestion for the Teenage Mutant Turtles Cowabunga collection, and to their credit, Digital Eclipse did listen and did add that feature in. So they do actually listen to feedback, which is actually pretty rare and pretty humbling for a developer, and I'm glad they do. And they probably know themselves internally. There are probably some reasons why the game released in the state it was. I know how the industry works, so it may be something to do with Atari, it may be something to do with Warner Brothers. I will give them the benefit of the doubt to some degree, because the various things, there are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that we as gamers and consumers won't ever know about. So hopefully they will take a lot of what I'm about to say in this video on board. I do certainly want to see more Mortal Kombat games being added to this collection in the future, and maybe we may even see a second collection based on the PS2 era titles. But I think I'm going to start with a list of games I did expect to be included. So it's clear from the get-go this release covers up to the end of the PS1 era and includes Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3, Ultimate and 4. So I didn't expect Mortal Kombat 5, 6 and 7 to be included, or as they're better known by the subtitles, Deadly Alliance, Deceptions and Armageddon. And sadly the brilliant Shaolin Monks is also missing, and that is an absolutely fantastic spin-off game as well. I think the only question is whether Mortal Kombat 4 Gold should be classed as a PS2 era release, or whether it should be classed an expansion of the original MK4. I think that is something Digital Eclipse will know. Now at present, as of the time of recording this video audio, that is the 6th of November 2025, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection includes the following titles. Mortal Kombat 1, the original arcade, and then we have the Mega Drive / Genesis port of it. We have the SNES / Super Famicom port, we have the Game Boy, and we have the Game Gear port. For Mortal Kombat 2, we have the arcade game, we have the Mega Drive port, we have the Sega 32X port, we have the Super Nintendo port, and we have the Game Boy port. For the original version of Mortal Kombat 3, we have the arcade game, the Mega Drive port, and the Super Nintendo port. For Ultimate Mortal Kombat, we actually have two arcade versions. We have the original arcade version and we have the WaveNet version. The only home port on this collection so far is the Super Nintendo version. Next up, we have Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PlayStation 1. We have Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero Mythology on the PlayStation 1. Then we have Mortal Kombat 4, the arcade version. Then we have Mortal Kombat Special Forces on the PlayStation 1. And finally, rounding out is a trilogy of Game Boy Advance games. We have Mortal Kombat Advanced, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition. And I have to admit, those GBA titles are a nice extra, as the GBA era I thought would probably not appear till a second Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Although I will admit, the Game Boy Advanced version of Ultimate, which is Mortal Kombat Advance, is utterly terrible. So it's nice they included it as a bonus extra, but it really is an appallingly bad version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat. It is by far the worst conversion I think I've played of any Mortal Kombat game. However, there are an awful lot of home port admissions. Now, there may be some licensing rights with a few of these editions, but I would hope Midway owned the rights to all their games, which has since been bought up, of course, by Warner Brothers. There are a few editions I am very surprised that they are missing, because they're for the same formats that are already available. I'm going to go through them all. There's one that's the creme de la creme, and I think even Digital Eclipse are going to be a bit embarrassed when I mention it. You know which version I'm talking about. Almost all the Mortal Kombats got PC ports as well, but none of them are included. But interestingly, the PC port of Mortal Kombat 4, all its documentation is included in this collection and not the game itself, which makes me wonder if that's another one to be added at some point, as that version did include Goro, who was absent from the arcade release. But I suspect a few of these may be held back till the release of Mortal Kombat 2, the new film, at which point I suspect they will then be added. Now, I'm not going to cover the various home computing ports, but I am going to cover all the mainstay console ports. And I was actually surprised by how many titles are missing, including ones where they're already supporting the emulators for. So missing on the Sega Master System is Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and 3. I should point out getting Mortal Kombat 3 would be quite kudos, because that was originally a Tech Toys Brazilian only release. On the Sega Game Gear, Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 are both missing. On the PlayStation 1, ports of Mortal Kombat 2, which I only think was released in Japan, Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat 4 are not included on this collection at present. On the Nintendo 64, Mortal Kombat Trilogy isn't included, and that version is quite a few changes to the PS1 version, including having the female version of Chameleon. It also has a few extra moves and other changes. Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero on the N64 and Mortal Kombat 4 on the N64. And I should point out the PS1 and N64 versions of Mortal Kombat 4 featured a few additional characters, including Goro and Nude Saibot. On the Sega Mega Drive, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is not included, and that was also developed by Sculpture Soft, so its submission is a bit of a strange one. I suspect that will probably get added at a later date. On the Sega Mega CD, known as the Sega CD to you guys in the US, the CD port of Mortal Kombat is missing, and it does have a few improvements over the Mega Drive port. On the Sega Saturn, Mortal Kombat 2 is missing, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is missing, as is the Sega Saturn port of Mortal Kombat Trilogy, which is quite rare here in Europe. On the Dreamcast, Mortal Kombat 4 Gold is missing, but that does depend which way that version falls. Would that be included in a second Legacy Collection or not? On the Nintendo DS, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is missing. However, I believe that was largely emulation of the original arcade game, so you'd be emulating an emulator of an emulation. So not one to necessarily include, although it does include a nice little puzzle game as an alternative. You've got 2 games on the cartridge. Some of you may be wondering why I left the Game Boy till last. You get the MK1 and 2 double pack, which was missing. The Game Boy port of Mortal Kombat 3 was missing. And now Digital Eclipse might be about to groan. Mortal Kombat 4 on the Game Boy Color is missing. Can anyone tell me who the developer of Mortal Kombat 4 on the Game Boy Color was? Digital Eclipse. Yes, that's right. Digital Eclipse have not included their own Game Boy Color game. And they've included Game Boy Color games in their Worms Armageddon collection. So they have the emulators. There's no excuse not for including it. So either they didn't want to, or they're holding it back, or they haven't got round to adding the emulation, but I'm guessing it will be coming. So yeah, shame on you, DE, for not including that one by start. I mean, you worked on it. I know technically this is the second version of Digital Eclipse, but it was largely founded by most of the same people, so there we go. But those are all the key admissions. I think the biggest admission, probably for technical reasons, is the Dreamcast one. But from what I understand, the emulation they're using is largely core-based. It may be around things like emulators like RetroArch, although I'm not a big fan of RetroArch for various reasons. But Dreamcast emulators that are available, and there is a working core emulator for the N64, as the Evercade did do a port of Glover, and that was the N64 version. And the Sega Master System there is a core for. As I said, Game Boy Color games have already been covered in previous Digital Eclipse, so yeah, some of these emissions are a bit odd. The Sega Saturn one, again, I'm not sure there is how good the cores are for it, but they could include them. I think they should include them. If there are any licensing issues, Digital Eclipse need to come out and say, XYZ Mortal Kombat game we cannot include because of licensing issues. That would be fair enough. Okay, I think that covers pretty much all the releases from the 90s. This collection really seems to cover most of the 90s games, so I wouldn't expect it to go beyond that. And I think the GBA games were a nice extra, but yeah, those are all the games I would have expected it to include, and there are a few, as I said, odd admissions. Now, if you think I've missed a port of Mortal Kombat from my list that you think should be included, then do leave a comment below. The one thing that I will say about the Mortal Kombat arcade is that you only get one revision of each arcade game, and that may slightly affect the difficulty, etc. In the case of Mortal Kombat 1, you only get revision 4.0, which is not even the final release. An enhanced version 5.0 was released with some bug fixes and further adjustments, and I'm surprised you can't select the multiple revisions. One, it's quite good for a historical factor to have them, and also it's quite handy because there were certain combos some players used to perform that you can't do in the later revisions or that got nerfed, and it is a bit annoying to know that you only get the one revision. So that applies to all games. You are missing revisions. If you go through like MAME, you can download any revision, and it would be nice if the option to play as the different revisions were there. I can appreciate you'd only want certain revisions for online play because some are very unbalanced, but it would still be nice to include the prototype revisions and the more final revisions. As it is, Mortal Kombat 1 only has 4.0 T unit. It doesn't even have the Y unit, which is actually mentioned in the Krypt, which I found a bit odd. Mortal Kombat 2 is 3.1, but it doesn't have 3.2, which was a European only release, so I think that had a few fixes in it. The same with Ultimate and MK3, so it would have been nice if more versions were available. Mortal Kombat 4, the final revision was Revision 3. The two revisions before that were both prototype, but again, it would have been nice if they were included, as you can download them all on MAME. Now, I suppose it is time I put the big QA hat on and start looking at all the problems with the game's improvements they need to do and other things. So let's start with the Krypt, shall we? And I'm going to have a quick look at the music player, because this is a bit of an odd one. The music player is missing a number of soundtracks, like the Mortal Kombat 1 arcade soundtrack. If you go here, this icon here, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be indicative of the playlist or whether it's supposed to be MK1, but there is no MK1 soundtrack in this list, which is an odd one. Again, MK Ultimate and 4 are combined in the official OST, but it doesn't have the arcade OST, so it would be nice if they got round to adding all the arcade OSTs to this music player. So MK1 Arcade is missing. MK2, I think you got the OST, MK3 Ultimate and 4 are combined, but yeah, MK1 is totally missing the arcade version. Why is it missing from this playlist? This is supposed to be a music player. It should all be here. In fact, there should be the music playlist for all the arcade versions should be here. The Krypt is very nice, but there is a whole mountain of bugs going through this feature. I really am quite surprised how slapdash it looks. So yes, it's nice with the presentation. I do quite like the presentation as you navigate through. But just in this character menu here with the combatants, there are a number of admissions and mistakes. So an easy one. Sonya Blade's Mortal Kombat 4 text is showing an incorrect font and colour. You'll notice the red title and the black thing that disappears. It should be white like all the other characters. This is a really sloppy C presentation bug that they've not picked up on. It is not fixed since the latest patch. As a whole, this combatant section looks a little bit mishmash because it jumps from, if you go through it, when you actually click on a character, it just goes Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, then it just jumps to Ultimate, and sometimes it has Trilogy. It'd be nice if it had all three and they sorted it out. Yes, I appreciate there's going to be some duplicates of the endings, but it'd be nice if it at least had a page for each of the games. Like Kintoro doesn't have a Mortal Kombat Trilogy page, even though he's in Trilogy. I mean, just a little bit of fluff saying he entered the Trilogy tournament. Again, Goro doesn't have a Mortal Kombat 4 page, but he's in the PS1 version, and that is yet to be added at present, so maybe he'll be added. The way they've done the endings is a bit slapdash. They've only sort of included one. Really, they should have included the Mortal Kombat 3 ending in all the artwork, the Mortal Kombat Ultimate ending in all the artwork, and the Trilogy one in the artwork. Yes, I appreciate there's going to be a lot of duplicates with the text and the artwork, but at least you show it all to what it goes for each game. It's a bit confusing as it is because characters like Scorpion had unique artwork in Trilogy, but they're only showing the Ultimate ending. Characters like Sub-Zero and Noob, Saibot get really confusing with how their listings have been done. They're a bit messy. Jade had unique artwork only in Trilogy that's missing. The MK3 artwork is missing for a lot of the characters in this current ending setup. It just seems a bit weird and mishmashy. They should have done it clean, even if it does include a lot of duplication, just so it looks nice. Now, just with this combatants page, I've noticed a lot of mistakes and omissions. Effectively, what's happening is when you start with the combat thing, you get all the characters, and then as you go through, it changes the artwork based on the game they appeared in. There are a couple of mistakes just off the bat with that. So Human Smoke, you'll notice they've given him a recoloured Sub-Zero picture for Mortal Kombat 2. Now, that should update for Trilogy and probably Ultimate Mortal Kombat, where they should have his Human Smoke picture that was used for Trilogy, where they did another recolour of Sub-Zero's one, but they did an actual one in-game. But instead, it's only showing that MK2 picture they've done, and that MK2 picture incorrectly shows for Trilogy when you're actually playing in-game as per the moves list, so someone needs to fix that. That's one bug, and that's just a straightforward art bug where they haven't added in the Human Smoke picture from MK Trilogy. Human Smoke is incorrect. Another one that's incorrect is Nude Saibot. His artwork here in the combatants page. Now, his appearance in Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and Trilogy is different across all three games. So in Mortal Kombat 3, the original arcade version, his sprite was based on Kano. He was a black version of Kano sprite. In Ultimate, he was an all-black version of the ninja, completely all black. He blended in the background. For Trilogy, they gave him a grey sort of armour plating at the front. He's partly black and grey just to make him stand out a bit more. However, currently on the combatants page, it shows the Trilogy version of Nude Saibot for all three games, which is incorrect for Mortal Kombat 3 and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, as he had two very different distinctive looks in those versions, as I have just shown. Nude Saibot's ending from Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet is also missing as well, and as you saw in this video playthrough I did, he does have it. Admittedly, the ending that they did in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet is very unfinished and broken. The text uses Smoke's human form text, and you also get Kano's voice announcer, because of course you have to select him using the Kano. It's quite funny. It's very unfinished, but it's still there. It's still in game. It should be included, even if it is a bit messy, and with maybe a bit of the developer note saying, yeah, this is an unfinished version, but it's just nice to include it just as a thing for the Krypt to say, this is what happened in the arcade version. That is all missing. So Nude Saibot and Smoke both need an update on this Krypt page, and they were two I spotted off the bat really quickly. Now, this next bug, I am going to put in a quick epilepsy strobe lighting type warning, just because there's going to be some rapid flashing in the Krypt menu. I'm going to show you it's nothing too major, but just be aware if you suffer from any type of photosynthesis to be aware of that. I should actually mention to Digital Eclipse, you may want to consider adding an epilepsy warning to the game, because there are certain moments in the game, like when you beat Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 2, and especially 3, because when you beat him in 3, you get a rapid white and black flashing before it then flashes through the various colours. And there are a few moments even I thought, oh yeah, if I was a publisher here, I'd go, maybe we should add an epilepsy warning for that moment. I have to consider whether you want to add a warning. That's entirely up to Digital Eclipse, but it's just something I think is worth me mentioning from a sort of legal perspective as a QA guy. and somebody makes videos, I am getting better at being consciously aware of when games are doing rapidly flashing. I don't suffer from epilepsy myself, but when you just sometimes see it, think, yeah, maybe we should just give people a warning about it. But yeah, at this point here, I've noticed quite a lot of times where there is rapid flashing in the Krypt menu. So what you do only occurs at certain points in the menus, but I'm just going to show you a few instances. First up, we'll go to Sonya. And basically, if you move here, follow this direction of movement, and I've noticed when you stick on this section, you'll see that grey flashing there. And there are other points in the game as well this occurs, or in the Krypt menu. I noticed this one here on the Goro section. And another one here. It's obviously some conflicting graphics layer, but it does look a little bit messy. It is a Class C graphics bug as it doesn't have any major impact. Because it's rapid flashing, it's something you should consider. This one does need addressing. It does occur at a few points. I suspect it occurs at a few more points. It's probably something to do with how the Krypt menu and the backgrounds are working that's causing it. So I'll let DE try and figure what's cause of this one out, but it is 100% and very easily reproducible. Just going to the points of the menu and moving back seems to cause it to occur. Just basically move to one point and back and then just sit on that point for a few seconds. It may even occur if you just sit on a point for long enough. Next up is a graphics bug that has only recently been introduced since the new patch. If you go into a game on the menu, so you select your game, go into the game, and if we exit out, and then if we go to, say, the next game and bring up the text for it, as you can see there, the other game is now showing on screen. This is a very simple bug to get rid of. As you move back and forth, it will quickly stop appearing, but it does occur for as long as that game you last played is still on the text screen as you're moving around. But once you move off it or get it out off the menu totally, it will then seem to disappear. But yeah, it's a bit of a sloppy C as well, and this one seems to have occurred since the latest patch, so digital clips, do check this stuff. I mean, this is quite an easy one. I noticed this within about 30 seconds of me playing, so someone's not done a lot of quick playthroughs here just to go in and out again, just checking all the menus are functioning. This is something a smoke test should have really caught. But it is an easy one to spot and makes the polish of the game look quite bad. Now, this bug was quickly fixed in the second patch they released, but the fact it was slipped in so quickly is rather concerning. Okay, I think the next main issue I'll tackle is that the Mortal Kombat 2 32X audio is missing. Or was missing because they have since patched it. Still, I'm going to show you this bug just so you're aware of what was happening. And I have no idea how this was happening. I can only guess either they were using a bad dump of the game, or more likely my suspicion is something was running incorrect with the sound channels of the emulator. Basically, a lot of the voice sound effects, like the announcement of Sub-Zero's name, was missing.
Fight.
So here's what was happening. Got some footage of it when the bug was still present.
Outstanding. Finish him.
And in this comparison, here's it being played on a working emulator with a good ROM, just to show you how it should have sounded. This is Fusion 364, which is over 10 years old now.
Finish him. Sub-Zero wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
And here's how it sounds now since the last patch of yesterday.
Finish him. Sub-Zero wins. Fatality.
So you can see this is now fixed. There are some audio effects still missing on the 32X version because not every audio effect was present. The oh sound effect when they're running on the ice is actually missing in the 32X version period. But yeah, there were a number of announcements. Character name was incorrect, was not being announced, and things like Fatality and Flawless Victory weren't being announced. It was quite bad. How this slipped through, I don't know. Now, the next question I want to raise is the lack of Dipswitch access and the sound levels, because this is related. So for the arcade games, apart from Mortal Kombat 1, the sound level is quite quiet. And the reason for that is that you have to access the sound minimum maximum screen in the Dipswitches in order to change it. Fortunately, you can do that via the ED Boon menu option, so you can still access the up and down. Now, that's included in Mortal Kombat 2, 3 and 3 Ultimate. By default, the volume level was so quiet you couldn't hear anything, so you had to adjust it in the actual Dipswitches. Unfortunately, there is no slider to adjust that presently outside of ED Boon menu. So some of the Dipswitches have been placed into the starting menus. You can now, when you get the option menu, some of the Dipswitches, like the difficulty level, there is a difficulty level that's got 5 settings, that can be accessed. But the sound adjuster, as shown here, that you need to really adjust to turn up, the default volume is way too quiet, cannot be adjusted other than the EG Boon menu. So digital Eclipse need to put in a proper menu to access this sound adjuster from the main menu, so you can access it from the game menu, adjust the sound levels for the game. The fact this isn't inherently accessible straight away is a bit of another amateurish mistake, and means they haven't quite researched their games properly. Digital Eclipse really should research them. It's a known flaw with the Midway games that the volume level was always set ridiculously low initially, and you had to raise it. At maximum, it's perhaps a bit too high, but you do need to raise it up and down a bit. Unfortunately, in the arcade version of MK4, there is currently no way to access the Dipswitch audio slider option at present, either via the option menu or in-game via any of the test menus, because you can't access any of them at all. And going on that, you cannot fully access all the Dipswitches. So although the EG Boon menu, as shown here, is accessible via the option menu, they have given you a quick shortcut to it, the main Dipswitch test menu is not. That is by holding down the test key. And again, I raised this issue with Digital Eclipse before. I don't know why they don't allow you access to the core Dipswitch screen as shown here. This is the core Dipswitch screen. I'm accessing it via a MAME ROM. It's a standard feature of MAME. If I was a platform holder, this would be a TRC that you have to access this. Yes, this means you can muck around with coinage and things and slightly mess up the game if you don't know what you're doing, but there would always be a reset to default option. But, you know, having the ability to change the coinage and stuff, some people do actually like having the options to do this in-game. And to me, it's not a perfectly emulated experience until all of these options are here. Often these options have hidden things, like in Mortal Kombat 2. You can see one of the audits that was a joke audit that said Kano transformations. That was a joke one. But yeah, these Dipswitches should be accessible fully in-game and via the option menu. Not all of them are. And I think even the coinage options should be available via the in-game menu. Some people want that truly authentic insert credit experience, and right now Digital Eclipse haven't set that up, and they should be getting into a standard where you can, yes, free play is a mode, you should have either free play or coinage, because some people want to do the coinage, and sometimes you need the coinage suits for certain features. That was the problem with the Turtles collection that I complained about. They did partly address it, although it didn't give you full coinage access, but at least they did address it in the Turtles one. But this one, it's not here. And I did see speedrun players do like having the coin option separate from the press start. So it is an issue. It should be set up this way. At the very minimum, they need to add in a sound option. But ideally, all the options, the test menu should be accessible for advanced users if you need to access it. Because there are always certain things we might discover later on where you might unlock additional things. Because not every option is accessible via the EJ Boo test menu. That was a slightly different test menu to the raw Dipswitches. Now, slight errata to this Dipswitch section, which I didn't realise, but I'd like to thank another YouTuber I was called Killer Arcade Games, who is an arcade aficionado, so do check out his YouTube channel. I will leave a link for it in the description. He's done a video on Mortal Kombat 4 where he compared the different versions, because I was looking at the different versions. He'd also done a video briefly on the Legacy Collection, and he'd pointed out that you can actually access the original Dipswitch menus in Mortal Kombat 2 and Ultimate and 3 from the EJ Boon menu if you use the CPU board test, which is quite an interesting feature. Basically, you run a diagnostic test. Now, one thing the diagnostic shows, as with the Turtles diagnostic, because you could access that at the start, some of the ROM sets are bad, which is not a good thing. But what that tells me is Digital Eclipse have fiddled with some of the ROMs for various reasons. Maybe legal, they may have changed dates in them, but they have gone in and edited something, and this may have caused a problem with the actual original ROMs, etc. That's why I'm not keen on when it's throwing back ROM errors. But you can check the original difficulty settings, and that seems to be adjusting correctly. Sadly, you can't use the EJ Boon menu in Mortal Kombat 1 to access any of the Dipswitches, and there is no EJ Boon menu in Mortal Kombat 4, and you just can't access the test menu, which is irritating. Interestingly, in the MK2 menu, I saw a couple of them, like free play, are hard locked. But just to show you a point, I did discover another issue. If you do access this, technically this is more of a tester bug, I suppose, but if you access this menu, then go back to play the game, or if you just try to exit out from this menu once you've gone into the actual test menu and then try and exit back to the main menu, then on the PlayStation 5 version as shown here, you will hard crash the game. Our crowning moment of any tester's achievement is to get a Class A non-prog. As to what's crashing it, my suspicion is this is updating a value that you've accessed it, or one of the values that Digital Eclipse is not checking for or editing, and when it's going back to the main menu it's saving that setting and then throwing a bit of a wobbly. Because it's going, oh hang on, you've changed this setting but this setting shouldn't be changed, and then hard crashes. Admittedly, the issue with accessing the test menu at the minute is that if you were to change it off free play, or if you could change it off free play, there's no button to insert credit. I wouldn't be surprised if Digital Eclipse patched these out, which would be disappointing, and I'd actually say don't patch them out, just make them more accessible, because it would be handy to see these settings. Admittedly, some of these settings will be changed from the main menu, but you can't be changed in-game. It would be handy if you do like Arcade Archive, where you can change these settings in-game. It just throws up a warning that says this setting requires a restart of the arcade. But as I said before, as they've been editing the ROMs, there is a chance for MK1 and 4, and I do feel MK1 seemed like it was set by default to the harder settings, because it did seem a lot more aggressive, as if it was on a harder AI setting than normal. So either it's an arcade revision issue, or the game is locked on, let's say, hard, and changing the difficulty in the main menu isn't actually affecting it, which I have known in the past. Something's gone wrong with the menu and the option menu, and then it doesn't change what it should do in-game. Speaking of options, now supposedly it's been fixed, but I noticed there were issues with the arcade Mortal Kombat Fatailty Time option if you changed it in-game rather than on the main menu. If you changed it on the main menu, it seemed to work okay. In-game, it was a bit hit and miss, it would work. I don't know whether that's because it needed a restart to trigger those options. Then it should give a warning to the user that it will need to restart before this option takes effect. Because even advanced players are going to struggle to tell, is the Dipswitches for the difficulties working correctly? This is another reason why you should be able to access things like the difficulty settings in-game. Because if one of those extra options Digital Eclipse added is broken, there could well be a chance that other ones. So they do need to spend some serious time going through and testing every single extra option they've added. Fortunately, all the secret character ones seem to work, because I've been using them because it's quite good fun to access the secret characters early, but I do think a few of the others may be broken, and it's not always easy to tell. Fatality Time's easy to spot. If something like the difficulty selector is broken, that's going to be virtually impossible to spot. Again, this stuff needs to be double checked and triple checked just to be absolutely sure it's running as the original arcade hardware intended. Okay, next issue, player 2 can't customise their controls. This is one that we noticed on the 2-player menu. If you have 2 players log in, if player 2 attempts to edit their in-game controls, they can select the menu. However, player 1 will have to press the button to select this. I noticed this when I was playing with my brother. We noticed that player 2 can select the menu, but when you go to change the controls, player 1 has to press the button to change it, which is just an odd bug. I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe it's because of conflicting profiles. This was seen on PlayStation. I should make a note, all these bugs are seen on PlayStation 4 and 5. I have no other version of the game, so it may be fine on Xbox. and it may be fine on PC and Switch, but on PlayStation 4 and 5, this is what we saw. Player 2 can't change the controls. They can get to the selection, but then player 1 has to press the button, so something's not quite working correctly there. Right, another issue is with the moves list. Now, this has been partly fixed, but there are still problems that you cannot access the moves list from the main menu. You should be able to bring up the moves list on the main menu, select a character and be given a massive list of all the moves. As it stands, you don't get the moves list per se until you go into game and select your character. Then the option works to give you the moves list. Now, initially in Mortal Kombat 3, some of the characters had their combos missing. Ultimate was almost completely missing the combos. In some games, it seemed like the moves were missing entirely. Fortunately, most of the moves lists and combos have now been added in with the latest patch, but this is something that does need a bit more research, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's still a few admissions in this list based on how speedily they seem to be putting it together and adjusting it and changing it. It does seem a bit on the ad hoc with this moves list, and they do need to make sure everything's perfect. There are a few move names incorrect and a few other errors. Now, on that note, being a long-time Mortal Kombat fan, and this is one of my gripes with Digital Eclipse, is I think they need proper researchers, because I don't think they have them with some of their games. They're not researching the games properly, and this is why they're making a number of errors. But on the fatality list, I have noticed an error with the fatality training for Shang Tsung's hidden fatality in Mortal Kombat 2. So for those who don't know, Shang Tsung can transform into Kintoro to finish off his opponent. This was actually a rather difficult one to pull off, and it's explained completely incorrectly in the Mortal Kombat Legacy training. So as you can see here, it just says hold low punch and then release. It says sweep. I really hate sweep because that range is a bit ambiguous. This fatality is one step back only, so it's not even sweep ambiguousness, it's actually one step back. I really hate the old close sweep. They need better ones, so they actually need next to, one step back, two step back, three step back, four step back. That's a far better guide for the range length of the moves. But this is actually a one step back move and requires that the players hold low punch down for over 30 seconds. It's not an easy one to pull off. You have to deliberately stretch out the matches in some case, as shown in this footage here. I'm actually doing jumping and stuff because basically if you do like the training does, we just hold it down and release it, it'll go fine. It should say hold low punch down. Training will allow like 2 seconds. It's over about 30 seconds. You have to hold it from 99. You need to hold it to about 69, as you can see with the timing here. And I've got a few failed attempts, so watch the timer on the failed attempt, and then got a successful attempt here in game. But yeah, you've got to hold it down for 30 seconds. It doesn't make that at all clear. And based on the fatality training, most people would try and pull it off and then it won't execute. It should say hold for 30 seconds. This one is also actually omitted from a number of versions of Mortal Kombat 2, so I think most of the Mega Drive, the 32X port, and annoyingly the Sega Saturn port as well, because I think they're all based on the same code and they never bothered to add it in. Now, it's fair to say the online mode looks like it's in beta at the very best, because this is completely unfinished at this point. Even the quick match mode doesn't seem to work quite correctly. After you select quick match, as you'll see in this footage, you get to pick your game, and notice I picked Trilogy for this match. I then got taken to a Mortal Kombat 2 match. Technically, quick match, you would expect that to be where it would just throw you into any match, but so I don't quite see why this even has a selection. Maybe it prioritises the one you pick first and then looks for other games. That needs to be explained better. The big issue that everyone's been complaining is the online is very laggy at present. My brother had a match where he was against some Nightwolf guy who just threw him endlessly. You should expect quick match, game selection, and then you would expect lobby, create a lobby, and then whether to make that lobby private or public. Because right now you cannot play with friends. If you and a friend just want to play online, you can't just go, here's my game code or here's my lobby, jump in mate, we'll just play. No, you just get pushed up randomly against people. So you might get connected with one another for a single match, you might not. Your best idea would be to pick one of the obscure games and hope you get connected, but of course most people are going to probably play Ultimate Mortal Kombat WaveNet. That's the one I've had the most successful getting games on an MK trilogy. MK1 and a few of the others seem totally dead, but as a whole the online is just not very good. There's no cross-play either, it seems. I think it's just cross-console, so I assume PS4 can play with PS5 and Xbox One can play with Xbox X, but you can't do cross-gen, and this is a game that I think really, because it's a fighting collection, really needed cross-play. I don't think Digital Eclipse have actually done crossplay yet, which is the problem. I think they need to step up and challenge themselves to get crossplay implemented correctly there, because that's a big boon. The only thing is, I think, make sure if you've got crossplay, an option to turn PC users on and off, because we know how many PC users like to mod, adjust and cheat with their games. There are a lot of issues with the online. Hopefully Digital Eclipse will address them, but said wrong matches, all sorts, just not getting matches. It's right now online, it's just not viable, and this mode just looks like it's completely unfinished in a beta state, and they should never have released the online mode in this state. Now, a couple of options that I think do need to be considered or added. One is a universal option for the settings. I don't want to play with the CRT shader because it looks terrible. I tend to go for full screen and turn off all the shading options, so it's just the raw visuals. Currently, you can't do that for every game in one go. You can't do apply to all. There's no option to apply to all. Instead, you have to manually go into each game, and each game mode, so the Fatality Training and the Verse mode, have separate options to the main game. This is infuriating each time I go in and out having to change the settings when I just want to go across the board, change this, apply to all. I appreciate some people may not want to apply to all, but that option should be there for those of us who do. Now, on the emulation settings front, this is something actually very important. They do need to have the option to have a 60 frames FPS and the original frames per second. That's how the game originally played. The downside is, because modern consoles only support 60 frames a second, you will get some static frames when nothing's happening. But the original Mortal Kombat games only ran at 55 frames a second, or more specifically, it's like 54.7 something or 54.3. Same with Mortal Kombat 4 was 57, so it's like 56 point something. They need to have that option, one for emulation accuracy, and two because that can cause some issues running at 60 FPS. Yes, you do need them at 60 FPS for consoles, so some of the modern ones may need them, but having that option to swap between it would definitely help. MAME does, you can force it into 60 FPS or use the original console frame rate, and sometimes playing the original frame rate can be better than forcing it into 60, but yeah, that is an option Digital Eclipse need to seriously consider looking at and actually properly adding in. Now, this is going to be a very interesting one, and something I think would be a string to Digital Eclipse's bow. Did you know when you are playing Mortal Kombat, you are not playing the original pixel aspect? Some of you might wonder what I mean. Well, you see, most of Midway's games, and this is actually true of Capcom's as well, it's actually an issue with the Capcom collections with the CPS2 games, use an off resolution. And the thing is, that off resolution, when shown in full pixel aspect, it's not quite widescreen, but it's much larger than 4:3. It's also the only way to run at this resolution to get all the circles appearing correctly, because everything in the default 4:3 resolution is actually squished. So if I show you here, we've got a few examples of the games running normally, and I'm then going to swap it in MAME to the pixel aspect. So basically the Midway arcade used to compress the actual aspect ratio. Yes, they may have intended this compression, but if you actually look at the pixel aspect, it's almost full widescreen, and circles only appear circles, so the moon only appears circles in this larger pixel aspect. And I've done this across the board. This applies to all the games in the Mortal Kombat collection. If you run it at pixel aspect, it looks nicer than 4:3 and widescreen. But currently, Digital Eclipse don't offer this pixel aspect. And this is an option in MAME. As you see here, I'm changing it via MAME. But look at the moon in these. In all these games, it looks so much nicer when you go to pixel aspect because it's almost a widescreen. Circle Dragon is never circle in any Mortal Kombat because they designed it for the pixel aspect, not the 4:3 screen. And what happens is the game renders at pixel aspect and then shoves it into a 4:3 screen. And I'm pretty sure a few MK Ultimate cabinets actually had a wide screen, not a 4:3 screen, because there were lots of different cabinet builds. There was the classic MK3 conversion, but I'm sure I saw a few slightly wider screen ones, and you used to get something akin to this. This looks really nice. So this pixel aspect needs to be available. Currently it's not, and it would be really kudos if it is added, because this pixel aspect sees almost widescreen. But as you can see here, like the moon in Mortal Kombat 1 and the dragon icon, it doesn't look quite right until you go to the pixel aspect. Currently in the game we only have 4:3 aspect and a widescreen and a 4:3 full. We don't have the original pixel aspect, which is 4 by about 400 by about 200. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, but as you can see, this pixel aspect in all the games looks so much nicer. So Digital Eclipse, you need to add this. It's a degree of polish to the collection that I think needs adding, because the Capcom ones are actually missing this on the CPS2 games, and the CPS2 games all look better in pixel aspect. So if Capcom are watching this, get your stuff sorted as well, Capcom. Now, Capcom and Digital Eclipse did actually work together on the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and that collection largely had the same issues as this Mortal Kombat collection. The Street Fighter 30th Anniversary one had lag in the games as well, much like this, and they never fixed it really either. In fact, it introduced a few new bugs, one of which was if you put the game to widescreen, the frame rates of the games was actually worse than the original arcade games, and there was a number of other issues. Because if Digital Eclipse are using the same base code, then that would explain why we're getting an awful lot of the same issues here. A telling sign is perhaps the fact Capcom didn't work with Digital Eclipse again after doing the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection. They later did the Stadia collections, and they were done by Capcom internally. In fact, in terms of playing Street Fighter 2 and 3, the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection is one of the worst ways to do it. It was also missing games like the Mortal Kombat Collection, including Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, which did get an arcade release, so that was a big oversight by Digital Eclipse and Capcom. Now, having just covered the pixel aspects, one thing that would be nicer if we had a bigger range of borders. I don't know why they haven't done a whole range in Mortal Kombat 1 backgrounds and one for 2, 3, 4. They should have done a background for each game on top of like the standard generic ones. They haven't done any. There's just no time and thought to this type of presentation. It's quite easy to do. I've made up a couple here just as examples. Although I appreciate they might be a bit squeamish about using some of the actors for various legal reasons that I will get into in a little bit. But as you can see here, this is one I quickly knocked up for MK1. I quickly knocked up one for MK2. Stuff like this would be really nice. I don't know why it's not in the game. It just seems like they've done this really quickly. The two borders we've got an arcade one and a TV one. It'd be nice if we actually get one per game. The Capcom ones had a generic arcade and one specifically for each game, which is quite nice, and I think this collection needs it. It's just a quick level of polish. It doesn't take long to do as well. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing there aren't that many background arts. An example, these mock ones only took me a few minutes as well, and I was just using existing in-game assets as well for a few of them. Something that is a little odd is the way they've actually done the controller config. Now, first off, you'll notice there's a second block and a second run button. And I think these appear to be a bit of a hangover from MAME, which does have a second block and a second run button. But the thing is that the original arcade boards did not use more than one block and one run. There was only one block ever on the original cabinet, and there was only ever one run. So I'm not sure quite why they've done it. Let's do a config, but I did notice a couple of times when using block 2, some of the moves weren't working. So things like Sub-Zero Slide, which needs block. If you use block 2, it wasn't working. It's an odd one. I think it's the way they've set up the menus, quite frankly, because what should happen is if you're configuring MAME, you can config as many buttons as you want to a controller input. So, for example, you could config 3 buttons to block if you so wished. You can't do that here. So I think Digital Eclipse need to perhaps rework the custom config screen so that way you can assign multiple buttons to the same block, high punch, low punch, high kick, run, etc. Because that just makes customization a lot better. Plus, with the config as it is, it's a little odd by default. And I would just say, because so many pads have the buttons, certainly the L1, R1 in different positions, you sometimes get 6 face buttons on some of the fight pads. And I've seen some fight pads where that's L1, R1, which is the better option to me. Others it's R1, R2. On sides I've seen like L1, L2. So basically more customization because you can't tell what the user's gamepad's going to be. And certainly with all the number of fight sticks and fight pads available, you want really good customizations options so the user can customize their controls to their pad. At the minute, it's not a great customization config. And this does lead to accessibility as well, because some people may have handicaps or disabilities, and giving them a whole range of options is a lot better option than limiting to what you can customize things. But I think they need to open and expand their horizons a bit with how they're doing these customized configs, because the current system, just as I said, isn't that good. The next major topic is the amount of missing extra content from the Krypt and Flyers section. Since I started putting together this video, Digital Eclipse have patched a number of issues, but there is still tons of Mortal Kombat content you would expect to find in this collection missing. Some of the bugs were just laziness. For starters, the Mortal Kombat 3 arcade flyer was showing as the PC flyer advert before the 1.60 patch. Oddly enough, the arcade flyer for Mortal Kombat 4 isn't present on the main game selection screen, instead it's only found in the Krypt section. In its place we have the PC manual here, which is odd seeing as the PC version of the game isn't included. It's stuff like this that makes me suspect the PC version will be added at a later date to the collection, or was cut due to time pressures. Direct images of most of the original arcade banner marquees are also nowhere to be found, and only the one for the original Mortal Kombat is shown in the Krypt. I was expecting to see high modern quality photos back, front and sides of all the cabinets, including the WaveNet version at NetherRealm Studio. But all we have is this small 3D model of them in game, along with a few legacy photos. The German arcade flyer is also missing from the game, shown here. Also freely available on the internet is the arcade operators manuals for most of the original arcade games. These are all currently missing from the game, and to me seem like a key part of the history of Mortal Kombat. A few of the arcade manuals are missing from sites like the Internet Archive, so hopefully NetherRealm Studios have copies of them to fill the gaps. None of the official strategy guides are here either to read, and I still own the original Bradley Games official guidebook to Mortal Kombat 2, and it's a great full colour read packed full of everything you need to know about the game, with tons of artwork from the series. The 3D cabinet art for the original Mortal Kombat arcade is incorrect, as it's missing Daniel Pesina's Johnny Cage from it, meaning it's not an authentic recreation of the original arcade cabinet, and I'll be discussing that topic more shortly. There's no Easter eggs and hidden extra list either. The best you get in the Krypt is a few images that tell you how to fight and or play as the hidden characters from all the games, but extras like all the silhouettes that pass the moon in Mortal Kombat, the "Oh" shout from Mortal Kombat 2 in the Deadpool if you keep down on the arcade stick held after doing the stage fatality, having your opponents falling off the ceiling spikes in Mortal Kombat 2 and 4 by holding down on both arcade sticks, well, none of these aren't listed anywhere as far as I can tell. There's no mention of the hidden logo screen on SNES Mortal Kombat 2 where Shao Kahn and Kintaro smash up the Acclaim logo. The list just goes on, and there needs to be a full-on cheats and tips section with all this stuff in it. I can just about remember this stuff from the 90s, and that was about 30 years ago, but many newcomers won't have a clue about it. In fact, even Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 WaveNet Edition has 3 exclusive Easter eggs which I found detailed on the website testyourmight.com thanks to an awesome forum members post from 2011. If you press and hold run during the BIOS startup, the message downloading WaveNet data changes to rewinding cassette deck. While pressing and holding the arcade stick right, high punch, low kick, high kick, run and block, that's all the buttons bar low punch and start, before the title screen, then the text on it will change the words WaveNet Edition to Nitro Edition. And if you press that exact set combination of buttons and stick in the same way on the title screen, then when the screen changes, the word Outstanding will be heard and the game will play the Secret Hall of Fame ending, which features a cameo from Raiden and Rain before playing the credits. None of these get mentioned in the collection either. While I've already discussed Smoke and Nude Saibot in the Kombatants section, Scorpion also uses the wrong sprite for Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, as he has a much brighter yellow outfit, which is a different yellow to his trilogy outfit, and the two look very different. I think it's fair to say Digital Eclipse did this section on the quick and just used the trilogy sprites for Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate and Trilogy pages. Trouble is there's a huge resolution mismatch between the MK3 arcade sprites and the trilogy ones, and the arcade ones look somewhat better despite them using the same art assets. Now, earlier in this video I went through a list of missing titles from this collection, and it also turns out that the box art and manual scans from almost all the missing ports aren't included either. The Mortal Kombat 4 PC box and manual, along with the USA cover art of the SEGA CD/Mega CD port, are two of the few exceptions. There's not one Sega Saturn cover, and very little mention of any of the Mortal Kombat 4 console ports. Also missing is all the PAL, European and NTSC-J Japan box artwork, and I'd like to remind Digital Eclipse that Mortal Kombat is a series that got released in more places than just North America. I should know because I'm English. Now let's talk about the one extra this collection really needs. One of the cool features of the recent Capcom fighting collections is the fact that the previously unplayable bosses were made fully playable in most of the arcade games to match the home ports. The fact Capcom did that adds in a level of polish you rarely see for arcade ports or emulation collections, and in the case of Street Fighter Alpha 3 on the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, they recently added in the PSP exclusive characters to the arcade version, creating a whole new revision of the game. Unfortunately, Digital Eclipse haven't done this here, and I think the feature to play as Reptile, Goro and Shang Tsung in arcade Mortal Kombat is long overdue. Kintaro is also one of my favourite characters, and I'm still waiting for the day him, Shao Kahn, Smoke, Jade and Noob Saibot are officially playable in MK2. Then there is the version of Noob Saibot featured in MK3 along with Montoro and Shao Kahn. While there isn't yet an official release of the arcade game with these characters playable, there is a fan version of the game called Mortal Kombat Plus that does, and if I were Atari and Warner Brothers, I'd be having a chat with this fan project to get it added to this collection, or at the very least getting Digital Eclipse to do a rough hack to make these characters playable in time for the Mortal Kombat 2 film release. As extra and exclusive content goes a long way to help sell a product and show how much you actually care about the game you are making. As this is something fans of the series have wanted for a long time, and as Capcom have done it, Digital Eclipse really need to up their game and do this as well. As a whole, the amount of missing content does just add to the feeling of this collection being rushed. Now let's talk about Johnny Cage, shall we, or more specifically Daniel Pesina, the actor who played him. Now, seeing as him and all the other actors in the first two games played a major part in the franchise, you would expect there to be some interviews with them. But no, there isn't. There's some archive footage, but other than that, only Sal DeVita and Kerry Hoskins get fresh interviews. I was hoping there might be a Richard DeVizzo interview who played Kano, my go-to character, and not even Carlos Pesina, who played Raiden and who's worked on almost every game in the series, including the recent MK1, gets an interview. Granted, some of the actors may have declined being interviewed, but some of them we all know are missing for another reason. Now, there have been some legal cases between a few of the original actors midway in the past, which looked to have caused some very bad blood between them. Some of the actors also did do roles and promotion for other games at the time, and it looks a bit like Midway got in a huff with them over it. Can't really blame the actors for doing other games. They were always going to be approached by other studios as Mortal Kombat was such a success. Midways themselves should have expected this and given the actors better contracts in the first place. Now, there is quite a lot of interviews about the legal cases on the internet, so I won't go into details on it, and looking at it myself, I think there might have been faults on both sides. But it does start looking a bit childish now, and it is time Ed Boon sorted this all out and made peace with Daniel Pesina. The hatchet needs burying and locking away, and they should just be talking about the game itself, along with all the original cast. After all, I was around 10 years old when I first played Mortal Kombat, and that was 30 years ago. Long time to hold a grudge. Maybe Ed Boon has already done that, but it doesn't seem like that to me. As right now, it reminds me of that spat Yuji Naka, one of the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, currently has with Naoto Oshima after he edited Naoto out of an old picture. It looks very bitter and isn't a good company image. While you may not always get on, you did make one of the best fighters in the 90s together. While there were largely 4 core developers on the game, I would argue the case that both John Vogel and Dan Forden could be seen as co-creators also as their work was so important to the original game, along with Warren Davis, the creator of Qbert, who did the digitalization software. The actors themselves played a bigger role than they get credit for at a time, as their looks would define many of the characters, not to mention all the other staff at Midway who gave Ed Boon and John Tobias the chance to make the game and to market and produce it successfully. You are only as good as your team when it comes to making games, and Mortal Kombat would not have been the game it is today without the help of everyone who made the original. Far better games did fail in the arcade because they couldn't market the game as good as Midway could. That's all I'm going to say on the topic. I can only hope some of the developers of the series can reflect on that. Another issue that is going to be impacting the difficulty is the lag. Now, there isn't going to be a whole amount that Digital Eclipse can do to the lag. They have fixed it a little bit, I saw. There were probably some outstanding emulation issues. But here's the problem. I believe the original Mortal Kombat games had a slight lag originally, and emulation adds in lag. LCD TV screens not set to gaming mode can add in immense lag. Wireless controller adds in lag, and the more of this daisy chain you do, the more you increase the lag. I saw quite a few people complaining that the PS5 version had more lag than the PS4, and that's probably down to the PS5 controller over the PS4 one. I've actually been using a wired fight pad for the PS4 one, and I noticed there was, at least maybe due to the patches and whatnot that have since come, there was a touch less lag. But when compared against MAME, it was still like you could just about see it was just a touch behind MAME. And MAME in itself adds in emulation lag as well. And this is something I actually saw John Carmack of Doom ID fame, who is, I think, a very talented coder. And I think perhaps he wants to look at this himself. And he was saying that he could notice the lag and he felt the coding needed to basically be touched up. And the problem is, I think Digital Eclipse, I don't necessarily think they're building their own emulators. I think they're using existing ones. And a lot of these existing emulators are hobby-built things that are not necessarily cycle accurate to the original arcade game, so aren't necessarily going to replicate everything exactly and add in lag and things. And there does need to be a real recoding of emulation to get it a lot tighter, I think, because a lot of this current code really dates back to the 90s when MAME started, and that was more a hobbyist project. So I think someone could build a scratch-built emulators now that was a lot better quality. I think the example of this is Mega Drive, where you have an emulator called Exodus, and the guy behind that has been trying to build cycle accuracy. He's also done a lot of features that replicate bugs and other issues with the original hardware that most emulators don't. So do take a look at the Mega Drive emulator called Exodus. It is by far the best Mega Drive emulator. It's got all the screen border areas. It does replicate issues with the 6-button pad as well, because you add on modules. So you say, do you want the Mega Drive? Do you want which pads do you want? And things like that. And that's how you should be doing emulation ultimately, where you have modules to set in and everything like that, and do it really, really smartly. At the minute, I think things aren't perhaps working as optimally as they should do. And I think Digital Eclipse could actually be the forerunners here. They've always been behind the curve using existing emulation. If you make your own emulation, get it absolutely pucker, then you can literally sell that to everyone, because you can say, right, we built an arcade cycle accurate emulator of your XYZ hardware, so anyone who then makes the SNES or whatever game, if you've got a cycle accurate emulator of the SNES, you can say, here Nintendo, we've got this actually 100% accurate one, here you go. And they're all going to start going, well, actually these guys have done it perfectly. I think that's ultimately where emulation needs to go. You just have one group of people who get it absolutely 100% perfect. They'll patch it a bit more, but there's always going to be a lot of issues. And this is going to be a problem because the AI for this game was always brutally hard. The Mortal Kombats were always deeply unforgiving with their computer AI. And when you add in lag, this makes the problem a lot worse. Things you could respond to before, you can't do because the lag takes your time. And on Mortal Kombat, I was definitely noticing it when you're tapping the buttons. It's not hitting out anywhere near as fast as it should do. And in a fighting game, that's a big problem. You might get away with it in something like Tetris and a few other collections like Worms that Digital Eclipse have done before. That's an issue that is going to impact a fighting game where everything needs to be frame perfect. I mean, even the Capcom games have added in additional lag, and it's not perfect, but it's better than this. this is a problem. I think Digital Eclipse do need to look at trying optimizing their emulation. I'd actually think people like John Carmack perhaps need to get more directly involved with emulation, because I think it needs some really experienced and very talented coders who are prepared to push the boat out to really try and get it 100% perfect. And I think you need people who really want to try new things and really push the boundaries. I think the corporate ethos that has affected gaming in more recent times doesn't work creatively, and it is failing in the long run because you're only doing sequels. And it's a really sad reflection on gaming. And I do think we need that now. We need people actually saying, yeah, let's make an emulator that's 100% perfect. Okay, I think that largely wraps up all the issues I'm going to cover. There was an issue in Mortal Kombat 4 where you could run through the opponent if you were on the right side of the screen running to the left. If you're the other way around, it didn't seem to occur, but that was an issue. We could literally run through them. And I saw Killer Arcade Games cover that, and he showed that. But testing it in the newest patch today, that appears to be fixed. There have been a few gameplay issues reported on Mortal Kombat 4, so hopefully all of them will be addressed in the not too distant future if they haven't already been. And the other thing that Killer Arcade Games said, which I didn't realise, and this is credit to Digital Eclipse, originally if you beat Mortal Kombat 4 with meat, the game would crash on the ending. Digital Eclipse have actually fixed that now so that the ending will now replicate whichever character meat was, which is quite an interesting thing. I didn't realise that. So yeah, that's quite interesting, and credit to Digital Eclipse for fixing that. So they have fixed some outstanding issues with the Mortal Kombat games, which is nice to see. And again, as said, credit to Digital Eclipse for adding the WaveNet edition of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. That really is the holy grail for arcade gamers. I think everyone thought that would never be seen again. There is a lot to like here in terms of the sheer number of games. Certainly here in Europe, the price of the collection is cheaper than buying some of the games on their own because some of them didn't sell well, certainly the spin-off ones, which are very, very expensive here in Europe. So you've got a great amount of content here, if nothing else. And I think it's almost certain there will be games added. One of which I suspect will be Mortal Kombat 4 for the PlayStation, because I'm quite surprised none of the other PS1 ports are here. The fact we're missing Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat 4, and the Japanese Mortal Kombat 2 is a bit of an odd one, and they were all PlayStation, and of course the PlayStation emulator is up and running. And it would be quite good to be able to play as Goro and Noob Saibot in Mortal Kombat 4, because they were only added in for the home versions. Gold added even more characters, added in Cyrax, Sector as a hidden character, adding Katana, Kung Lao, Melina, and one or two others who I can't remember. But yeah, Gold added in quite a few characters, so that Gold would be nice to be included, but I suspect Dreamcast emulation is probably not quite there yet. However, I am surprised there isn't some of the N64 versions, certainly Trilogy, and certainly MK4 N64. I mean, they could even add Sub-Zero Mythology N64 just to add all the N64 ones in. As companies like Evercade here in the United Kingdom have done an N64 emulator for their device, I think Digital Eclipse should look at adding the N64 games in alongside the other PlayStation ones. As a Saturn fan, I'd like to see the Saturn ones, but we are going to be covering the same ground with a lot of the same games. But the Saturn port of Trilogy I used to quite like. The MK2 port's pretty atrocious on Saturn, but some people like it. Ultimate Mortal Kombat is very good. As a little side note, I did briefly actually work at Eurocom when I was doing an on-site for Disney when we were working with them with Pirates of the Caribbean, and Eurocom did the Mortal Kombat 4 home ports, and they did still have the Mortal Kombat arcade when I was there. It wasn't turned on, but it was still there, which was quite nice. I was like, oh, it's a Mortal Kombat 4 arcade, and like, oh, they did the home ports, that's why. They did Ultimate as well on the Sega Saturn, which was a very good port. Sadly, Eurocom have long since gone bust, and I have no idea whatever happened to their arcade machine, sadly. I did wonder if Eurocom going bust is the reason some of the Eurocom games haven't appeared. However, I know Evercade have since reissued a few of the Eurocom games, so they must know the people who bought up the rights. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I'll leave this bit of a marathon video. Hopefully be able to cut it down. The raw edit for this record is about 1 hour 30, so oh dear. It's a bit of a long one, but hopefully Digital Eclipse will find this stuff productive. I'm sorry I've been a bit negative in this video. I think I'm just making a fact that this should have released in a better state. But, I mean, I have always enjoyed the Mortal Kombat franchise. I mean, Ed Boon and John Tobias and everyone else involved with it because you are only as good as your team, have done an excellent job with the series over the years, and there have been some really outstanding titles. I think Mortal Kombat 4 is one of the weaker games, but it's still a decent game. I think the problem with Mortal Kombat 4 was it got hammered at the time it released in 97. It looked dated against Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle, which had come out in 96, so comparison-wise, Midway were behind on the 3D tech. I mean, even Mortal Kombat 4 is still a fun game, and I think the mainline series has always been very good. And I think it's nice to see Digital Eclipse do this collection because I really wanted a more recent Mortal Kombat collection for a long time. It's been a long time coming. I know we've had a few cancellations along the way. I'm pretty sure they cancelled one in the pre-pandemic. I'm glad we finally got them. It would be nice to get a remaster of the original, certainly, or it would be nice if we did a remaster and added in the new Mortal Kombat characters as well, so you could do a Mortal Kombat anthology of all the classic characters and the new ones from Deceptions, Deadly Alliance, Armageddon, 10, 11 and 1. Certainly all the Mortal Kombat characters. No more guest characters, please. And also, please, Boone, chuck the gear and spin system. It so unbalances the game. I just want two characters to fight it out. I don't want any other periphery. And I think that's where the series has slightly gone wrong. If you ever need to ask any questions, you only need to look at MK2. When MK2 released in the arcades, there was a massive queue for it. I didn't even play it the first few times I saw the arcade game. There were so many people crowded around. It was probably what I'd call the last massive arcade game where you couldn't get near it due to the crowds. After that, the arcade industry started to diminish, but Mortal Kombat 2 was a phenomenon, and I still remember it to this day. The first time I was like, what's that arcade up there? Why is everyone crowded around it, like peeking around? Eventually, it's Mortal Kombat 2! And yeah, that's taking me back there. Something else missing from this collection that Capcom actually had done was they got some of the original artists who worked on the game to do some new feature artwork, and there's a lack of that in this collection again. Digital Eclipse don't appear to approach John Tobias to actually do a new Mortal Kombat artwork, and that would have been really nice to maybe do one of all the characters from the different games all together in one picture or something, or like a collage effect, similar to what Capcom have done for the Marvel vs. Capcom collection. Great that Digital Eclipse have done this. I am looking forward to hopefully the updates and extra games being added. I suspect, as I said, there will be some additional games, most likely around the time of the new Mortal Kombat 2 film. And I think, yeah, it's nice to see this collection happening. I just wish it hadn't released in the state it had. I shouldn't be doing a video showing all these bugs and issues and showing things missing and stuff. I'm a QA tester, and I'm slightly begrudgingly doing this because I'm not being paid to do it. So please do drop a like and a sub and etc. because they should be paying. And my attitude is this: you should be paying people to look at this and do this all properly, so that way you don't release in this state. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set Digital Eclipse a little challenge here. I'm going to put a tick list in the bottom of all the issues that are shown in this video, and as and when they get fixed, I will strike them through. So, each time they fix an issue, I will strike it through. That's my promise to Digital Eclipse, and as they do, I will say in the comments, if you go down in the descriptions, it'll basically say, this issue's been fixed, when they get fixed. If they don't fix them, I will leave them up. If they do fix them, I will strike them through and put a note saying, this has been fixed. Which is fair enough, and I think a good way of me showing the appreciation that if they do fix them, and they do listen to feedback, and they have done in the past, so I think that's good on them. And so I do await their response. I will be emailing them with this. I will be tweeting them with this to say, you guys need to sort this out. I think there's a lot of issues here, and considering people paid a full price for this, begrudgingly think, yeah, you could have waited a week or two just to sort out a few issues. But yeah, overall, if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, I would certainly recommend getting this. Just be aware of a few bugbears. I think there is an issue of supporting the developers here, because I do want to see more retro collections. If this was to flop spectacularly, then we're unlikely to see a second MK Legacy Collection, and you're unlikely to see more stuff like this. And I want to see more Midway games, so Warner should be looking at doing more Midway games. Certainly, example, the Mortal Kombat characters turn up in the Grid as mentioned in the Krypt, and it would be nice if the Grid arcade game was either included in this collection at a later date. Never been ported before onto any home system, and the fact it's got the Mortal Kombat characters, I never knew about this game until I saw it. Oh, that's an interesting one. I'd quite like to play the Grid, and it is emulated. I did see a few people did videos of it, so that would be a nice one to try out, certainly because like you can run around and shoot lots of people as Scorpion or Sub-Zero and Noob Saibot. So one to add, if not this collection, then maybe the Mortal Kombat Legacy 2 collection. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself there. Thank you for watching. My name has been Random Gamer Riven. You can support us where and when. You can find us on various channels. I always leave this information in the description. That's all you need to know. I've spoken too long for this video. Thank you all for watching again. I will see you all in the next video.